And right now, to talk about a disappointing start to a Red Sox season, joining us from MassLive is the great Sean McAdam, who joins me here on the Christian Arcand Show. Mr. McAdam, good to have you. How you doing tonight?
Well, Christian, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm frustrated with the Red Sox. I think everybody is right now. Let's get into the bullpen and just sort of start there, because I thought, and a lot of people thought, and statistically I think we were all backed up by the numbers here, that the bullpen was a strength of this team until pretty recently, and now it's starting to look like it could be the element of the team that ends up sinking them. I mean, is that fair to say?
I think that's a little early and strong. I actually think the bullpen's going to be okay. I think Chapman's been better than advertised in the closer role. And while it has certainly not been a good week for Justin Slayton, he had retired like 25 hitters in a row before that meltdown in Toronto. Looks like he's just kind of off mechanically, not executing with some pitches and important counts. I think that they can work with him. And Garrett Whitlock is a guy who I think is going to contribute. My only worry there is he's not a swing and miss guy, and you're going to have balls in play with Whitlock. And given that the infield defense continues to be at least occasionally suspect, that worries me a little. But actually, I think the bullpen's going to be okay. I think there are bigger issues with the team.
I hope you're right about that. What bigger issues do you see then, Sean? Because offensively, they're good offense, and I think 3 out of the 5 starting pitchers are guys that you can rely on pretty well so far. So what is it?
Well, I think you have to be, at least a little concerned about the health of the rotation, right? You're already without Cutter Crawford. You're already without Richard Fitz. And now you've got Walker Buehler sidelined for at least a couple of starts. And I know you can say, well, it's inflammation, it's bursitis in the shoulder, no big deal. That may well be. But this is a guy who's 30, 31 now with a couple of Tommy Johns on his resume. And it always concerns me when starting pitchers are sidelined and have to go on the IL. Maybe it will just be a little blip in the road and he'll be okay. It had been kind of trending up of late. He had pitched better, so maybe I'm being a little bit of an alarmist there. But the other thing is, you can show me where the runs are and where they stand offensively among other major league teams. But there are too many games. You look at the number of one-run losses, and certainly you can attribute that to the bullpen meltdowns in the last week in Toronto and then at home, maybe some defensive issues. But a lot of it is, we watch these games and see that they're unable too often to produce big hits with runners in scoring position. And you shouldn't have the Minnesota Twins, a team that came into town scuffling, limit you to 3 runs in consecutive days in your own ballpark.
No question. And that's been, I think, one of the more frustrating aspects of all this, Sean, is that you see this team, this Red Sox team, in these 3-game series. They win the first game. They look like world beaters. Offense is clicking. They get a good start generally. The bullpen's fine. And then the next 2 games, whatever happens in that first game, it seems like they just revert back to this mediocre team again for the next 2. And that's been going on for about a month now.
Yeah, I mean, there is, I guess we can call that sequencing, right?
Right.
If they were winning the middle game of the series, maybe it wouldn't stand out as much. Ordinarily, you win the first one, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, we got 2 chances to win the series here in the final 2 games, and too many times they're missing opportunities on both. I think in the larger picture, Christian, that trend is more indicative of a team that is exactly 500, and that's the disappointing part here, right? They were 81-81. They went out and added Bregman. They went out and got themselves a number 1 starter in Crochet. They got a pretty effective reliever in Chapman, and they got a guy who has a history of success in Buehler. You figure, okay, you build on that from 81-81. Maybe you're up to 89, 90 wins, and you're competing for a wild card. And it's not as if they played themselves out of contention in 5 weeks at being exactly 500. But the whole issue was they were supposed to improve.
Right.
And record-wise, 5 weeks in, they have not. They're exactly where they were at the end of last year.
Yeah, and even after that 10-10, we talked about the hard reset at 10-10. It seemed like they had the series at home coming up, 4 games with Chicago at Fenway, and that's how you get right back on the track. And here we are again, 16 games later, and they're 18-18. We're talking with Sean McAdam from MassLive. Sean, let's talk about the Cassis injury, a gruesome injury over the weekend, to be sure, as Cassis now out for the year after having surgery. Let's talk in the practical here and now about what they do at first base, and then we can get to Cassis and the ripple effect from that afterwards. But what do you think the immediate first base decision is? We know Toro came up, Romy's here. Where do you think they go with all that?
Yeah, I think for the time being, they try to see if one of those guys can get hot, whether it be Gonzalez or Toro playing against right-handers. I have managed expectations there because we're talking about 2 depth guys who can be effective players as bench and reserve guys and be flexible and play a number of different positions. Gonzalez has a terrific track record of hitting lefties the last couple of years. He's probably the 3rd or 4th fastest base runner they have on that team. So he's a valuable guy, but there's a reason that these guys are in their late 20s and haven't established themselves as everyday players. And that's because there are eventually holes in their game. And I think the Red Sox are going to find that out. You know, you can tread water here for a couple of weeks. We've seen that in the past where guys are called upon to play more regularly than they usually do, and you get by. But as you noted, this is a season-long injury. They have 120-something games to go, and you can't fake it for that long. So in my mind, there isn't a logical full-time fix in the organization, and they're going to have to go out and be aggressive and invest and make the kind of move to get themselves somebody that can play first base. And I'm not talking about a Garrett Cooper, Dominic Smith guy. They did that a bit last year, but remember, too, that was with the expectation that Casas is going to be back maybe in late June, maybe early July. As it turned out, he didn't get back until late August. They didn't know that at the time. But this is, not coming back this year. So to me, while they can get by with some options in-house in the next couple of weeks, they've got to make a trade of significance because they've invested too much, both financially and emotionally, in this being a bounce-back season. And I don't think you can play 4.5 months or almost 5 months with a collection of reserve guys.
I agree with you there, and I am interested in discussing potential first base trade options, but let's talk about Triston Casas because, as you mentioned, last year he missed all that time. This year he had a brutal start to the year. I mean, at the beginning, no one was hitting except for Willie Abreu, and Casas and Devers and all these guys, Duran, they were all sort of struggling. Other guys busted out of it. Casas never did, and now he's done for the year, and there seems to be sort of this, hopeless feeling about him right now, and that's tough for a 25-year-old.
Yeah, certainly a lot was expected of him. He was going to be this fixture in the lineup, maybe a 4th or 5th hitter for a long time, somebody with the power to hit 30 or more home runs. In 2023, his first close to full season at the big league level, he has an OPS of 850 or so and hits 23 homers. And you figure, well, they're set at that position for a while. And now you look, and, he got into 30 games or so last year because of the ribcage injury. He'll have played fewer than 30 games this year, and he's done and not coming back. And, another thing to consider, Christian, is that this is not your basic ACL.
Right.
It's not, arthroscopic, clean it up, and he's back in a few months. This is a major reconstructive surgery here with the torn patella tendon, and it can take as long as 12 or 13 months to recover. So you have no idea what you can count on him for, going forward, if anything. That sounds harsh, but he will be 26 going into next year, and he'll have played about 50 games over the previous 2 seasons. He's got a long road ahead of him. So This is no longer, well, let's go get somebody to fill the position until Casas is healthy and coming back, because frankly, both because of his injury history, because of his lack of production over the last couple of years, and the severity of this injury, you don't know that he's going to be back at all.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think you're probably right. Who's on your list? Any first baseman out there? I mean, Ty France is a guy who may have injured himself stepping on his foot there, but that's a guy at first base who can hit with a little bit of power. Are you thinking in that range? You're going bigger? Like where do you think they go if they end up trading for a first baseman?
I wish I had a list of real big name options to get people excited, but the truth of the matter is that there aren't a lot of guys out there, and as others have pointed out, it's not going to be easy to fill this right now,
right?
Because it is unusual and challenging to pull off a trade of any consequence in May. Very few teams want to wave that white flag. Your best bet is, to zero in on a team that is going nowhere and is not about to convince its fan base otherwise. I'm talking about teams like Pittsburgh, Miami, Colorado, and see if there is somebody that has either played first base or is versatile enough that you think can make that change and learn it quickly. Hey, look, they force-fed Kyle Schwarber over there and got to the ALCS with him playing first base, only slightly better than I might have in those last couple of months in 2021. So it's not going to be easy. But this is the charge for Craig Breslow, because you can't do nothing and you can't rely on internal options, not for more than a few weeks. If you're looking at guys that are out there sitting home, maybe a guy like Anthony Rizzo, who did not go to spring training with anybody, who supposedly wants to continue his career, and maybe that's a stopgap that can at least get you to the trade deadline where it's a little easier to go out and address needs. It's going to take some creativity on the part of the front office to address this.
Rafael Devers at first base?
I understand what Alex Cora was saying over the weekend. Hey, we just got through moving this guy to DH. He wasn't happy there. He is finding himself. He's got a routine going. I don't want to do this a second time to him in a span of 3 months. In a best case scenario, in a couple of weeks, Rafael Devers goes to them and says, hey, I got to do what's best for us. I got to think of the team here. Let me start taking ground balls. Let me see if I can do it. I don't know if he's going to do that. There might be enough antagonism toward the organization, not so much for moving him to DH, I think, but the message they too often sent him in the offseason, which was, this stuff about Arenado and Bregman, just media speculation. And that blew up in their face. So there are some bridges to repair. I think Cora has done a decent job getting Devers acclimated at DH, but I also think he knows this is kind of volatile now. Let's leave it alone. So maybe Devers eventually, but not right away.
All right. Before we let you go, you mentioned Alex Cora and the job he's doing with Devers and bringing him along. How would you, through 36 games, and I know they're at 500, how would you grade Cora's performance so far this year?
Well, he has to take responsibility for the performance of the team on the field. And as we've said all throughout this, it hasn't been good enough. In no way did anyone expect the Red Sox to be a 500 team. Now, nobody expected them to be, playing 750 ball either, but they've been disappointing. And further, some of the same issues keep popping up. The infield defense, things like that, the inability to produce with runners in scoring position. And look, Alex Cora is not out fielding the ground balls or being at the plate when there's runners at first and second and two out. But ultimately, the performance of the team reflects on the manager. So while I heard him give himself kind of jokingly an A the other day with you guys in the afternoon, I think he was. I think that was some wishful thinking on Alex's part. You can't, if you're grading him, give him more than a C or C plus for a team that is playing 500 through 5 weeks.
That is the voice of Sean McAdam at MassLive. Sean, great to talk with you as always. Thanks for the time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good, Christian. Thanks.
All right. Once again, Sean McAdam, MassLive, joining me here on the Christian Arcand Show. Check his stuff out at MassLive.com. You can find him on Twitter at Sean McAdam.